Could I have your attention, please? I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Pflugerville City Council, November 28th at 7 p.m. This evening. We're always great to have scouts in chambers, and they're willing to do the pledge for us this evening. So we have PAC 711 who'll come forward to do the pledge with us. And we also do the Texas pledge.
Okay. So go ahead and say. Salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
If you'll remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Scouts. Our next item is public comment. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not on our published agenda, final agenda, will only be heard by the City Council. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by City Council. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. And Ashley, have none? Okay. Anybody here wishing to make public comment? Okay. I'm sorry, did you say?
I've got a lot of things to say.
All right. Our next item, reading of the consent agenda. Council, or Mr. Rogers, do you have items to pull?
Yes, I'd like to pull 4C, 4D, and 4F.
Okay, very good. Ashley, if you'll read the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. Items 4C, 4D, and 4F have been removed from the consent agenda. Item 4A, approving an ordinance as amended on second reading with the caption reading, an ordinance of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, amending the City of Pflugerville, Texas Code of Ordinances, Chapter 72 regarding speed limits on city streets, Jesse Bowles Road and Cameron Road, to establish prima facie maximum speeds, providing for a penalty for a violation of Chapter 72 as a Class C misdemeanor and a fine in the amount not to exceed $200, repealing all ordinances to the extent they are in conflict, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. All remaining items may be acted upon in a single motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. And Ashley, we don't have our things set here. Well, and I'm actually
Do you know that password?
don't have the password to get into my. Do you know the password to my?
Well,
Okay. All right.
mine looks okay today. Mine
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah. Just click on your, because I know it's password either.
Mine's working.
Do you want to do it orally?
I guess we could. Okay, let's just
Oh.
do a manual vote.
Okay.
All right. Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem Weiss.
Yes.
Mr. Ruiz.
Yes.
Ms. Holliday.
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Mateer.
Yes.
And Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Our next item is item 5A, conduct a presentation on the Deutschenfest after action review. We have Shane Mize.
Best year.
Thank you.
Best year.
New competition.
There you go. Okay. All right, Shane.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Here to give you an update on the 2023 Deutschenfest event. When we were planning for Deutsche Fest this year, obviously you can see the dates and the community fair. Our goals from last year was to increase out-of-market attendance, have more vendor options available, add carnival-style rides. We heard a lot about that, and add pretzel vendors. Heard a lot about that as well. So, as far as
Wow.
let me see if, oh, there it is. Okay. So, sorry, they got out of order here. But as far as vendors, we saw an 8% increase in vendors, went from 53 to 57. Food vendors went up 20%. Our community fair vendors on Sunday went up from 23 to 32%, 32 vendors, a 29% increase. We have an 82% vendors planning to return based off our vendor survey, and 72 of them said they met or exceeded their sales goals.
Jeez.
Attendance, we had about 6,500 attendees. We saw our dwell time go up from 149 to 163. So not only are our attendance at or where we were at previous years, but we're having a longer dwell time. We saw a lot of San Antonio and Austin attendees working with comms. They sent hot tax dollars and did some targeted marketing statewide. So we actually saw, when you see non-res, that's really non-Austin metro area. So you saw over 2,000 folks from the San Antonio area, 1,600 from the Austin metro area that weren't in the Pflugerville city limits. And we saw 33 out-of-staters, including people from Vegas and Los Angeles.
So we had more non-reds than res.
How was
We
that
did.
tracked?
Impressive.
Through our Eventbrite.
The what?
Eventbrite.
Oh, Eventbrite. Okay.
Registration.
All right. I didn't know if you were geo tracking, and I was going to say
We did
if-
confirm with our placer data.
It's
if
the-
that is, well, some people that move here from San Antonio or other areas and have that phone number from other places, I just didn't know how you tracked that.
So there was about a $2,500 marketing budget, and a lot of it was spent on statewide marketing this year. We were up against
I got you.
the thing at the Circuit of the Americas this year.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Oh, F1.
yeah. So we saw a lot of people, I think, from the San Antonio area come into town, maybe hit that up, then go to us as well, or vice versa.
Okay.
Well, F1 will be going on the same time as we play the University of Georgia next year. So
Oh, that'll be a big weekend.
the greatest university ever known by man.
Carnival rides, we saw a request for increasing carnival rides. So we had 5 carnival rides this year and 2 inflatables. Pretzels, we saw a request for more pretzels. So we had almost 1,400 pretzels consumed at the event. Rotary bought about 700 and sold 628. They were giving them away as well, volunteers and everything they can. And then we used 750 for our adult and youth
They
pretzel
did.
eating contests.
Those pretzels were great.
Staffing of volunteers, we had 59 volunteers, performed 310 hours at an average of 5.25 hours for their shift. They were doing one shift, getting their shirt, and being able to go the rest of it for the weekend for free. And then we saw staff work 2,100 hours, 152 staff. Over 3 days, it averaged out to be a little under 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And we saw through our 2 surveys that 94% thought the load that we provided was manageable.
What was the complaint that they said it wasn't manageable?
Oh, boy. Probably dealing with council. I'd have to get it to you.
That's well deserved. Well deserved.
Our shirts, we did a shirt contest this year to see if we could have some people help us design shirts. You see the 2 shirts in the middle were the actual event festival shirts. The design on the right was the youth. It was so popular we actually did some adult shirts of that as well. We sold over 900 shirts, 911 shirts total. About $18,000 in revenue just from shirts this year.
Consider reusing those. Those are nice.
Yeah, some great
Change
things.
the date, the year.
And then y'all know I like to provide some unique facts that it's tough to catch any other way. And so we had over 145,000 social impressions. We had 8,800 interactions from those social posts. Over 900 shirts sold. 1,100 bratwurst, 670 sausages were consumed. 75,000 ounces of beer, 1,000 cans of wine, and water.
Wine. Wait.
Water. We had 1,700, I believe, of wine and alcohol sold from the animal shelter side, and then we had over 1.2 million steps taken in the fun run.
Now,
So
on those social impressions, is that people who used our hashtags, or are those social impressions just from city social media?
So the impressions is it was exposed to them on the page, and then the interactions is if they clicked on it in some way. So over 145,000 folks had the ability for it to be exposed to them while they were scrolling those posts. Over 8,000 interacted with that post in some capacity.
Okay, so this is not counting people who independently took pictures and tagged it
No, sir.
Deutschenfest 2023.
No, sir.
Those people
Although
are
those
not
numbers
counted
would be probably counted in some sort of interaction.
somewhere.
Yes, sir.
You're missing something. How much ice did we sell?
We might have to ask the Boy Scout troop. I'm sure there was plenty of ice as well. Yeah. And then we hope to see you next year, October 18th to the 20th.
Wunderbar.
Awesome.
Nice.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Any challenges that y'all saw that you want to correct for next year?
Yeah, I think there's some things on the after action. I think at some point I don't think you're going to see much more growth in that area. I think we always have parking challenges. We're always trying to get people there. But the folks that once they're there, they have a lot of fun at that event.
And Shane, what about the transportation bus? I know I saw the city buses were transporting people. Is that right? I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, we had some transportation issues because of Circuit of the Americas. We lost some folks that we had booked at one time. We ended up getting some fleet from College Station to be able to do our shuttling system. That's how far out we had to go. Circuit of the
Wow.
Americas. That's an impact with all the other
I
events.
was going to say, so next year it will be same weekend as F1 in Texas.
Real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I mean, we've historically done it on that third weekend. If for some reason we think that's impacting us, we could potentially look at a different weekend. But I think what you're seeing is year in and year out, we're seeing 6,000 plus people attend every year. They're having a lot of fun. Vendors are meeting their limits. We've had vendors the last couple of years say they reached their number. So the folks that are attending sure seem to be having a lot of
I
fun.
think it's phenomenal. The only thing I would ask is that is there any way to switch from going to midnight on Saturday instead of Friday?
Potentially, we saw a lot of success from vendors that could load out earlier because we did that Saturday night. Because a lot of our vendors also come from outside of the area. So instead of having to buy that second night hotel when the event ends, they can just start to load out and go.
You can bring that to the festival committees, I guess.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you all very much for the time.
Good job. Excellent.
Our next item is 5B, discuss and consider approving a preliminary development agreement with Griffin's Swinnerton for the development of downtown East and authorizing city manager to execute the same.
Nope.
Emily.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're bringing forward to you the next step in the Downtown East Development Project with the request for approval of a preliminary development agreement with Griffin Swinnerton. As you're aware, we acquired the land in December of 2021, and since that time, we've been working to prepare the property for development of the City Hall, the Recreation Center, and a vibrant mixed-use development. You can see here, and we've shown this many times, this schedule for where we have been, and we're glad that we're moving into Phase 3. And what Griffin Swinnerton will show you tonight is those concept plans that were created through the process that we've been through in the last 6 months. So we're now working towards the project design and permitting portion of the project. Through this, going with the master developer and the progression of that is that we selected Griffin Swinnerton and Catellus to be our master development partner in January and entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with them in March of this year. And since March, we've been working on the site due diligence, the refined concept plan for that, and we'll show you the results of that work this evening. Moving forward, due to some changes in the market, we're proposing to phase the development into 2 phases, phases 1 and 2. Phases 1 will include City Hall, the rec center, the infrastructure to support that to include the plaza, as well as commercial square footage, the amount of 11,750 square feet in that Phase 1, with the balance proposed in Phase 2. We'll master plan the balance of the property so that it's ready to go when that market picks back up. The pre-development agreement goes through design, the entitlements, which you'll see in the next year will be the zoning on the property, updating the planned unit development for that, working through the subdivision as well as all the site development permits so that we are under construction by the end of 2024. The pre-development agreement also goes through the costing elements of it for that GMP or guaranteed maximum price. After that, we'll enter into definitive agreements for that development agreement and master ground lease, which will go take us through construction of the infrastructure and public facilities, and as well as the delivering phase one of the commercial for the private development portion of the project. Through all of these efforts, during the ENA and then working towards the preliminary development agreement, we've been working internally with the staff that you see here, as well as the myriad of advisors the council has afforded us the opportunity to work with. Winstead, Hyatt Brown, our city attorney, Hawes Hill, McCall, Parkhurst, Horton, our bond counsel, our financial advisor at RBC, and AGCM's our owner's rep for the rec center as well as City Hall. All of these people have had input and review of the preliminary development agreement, as well as the concept plans and preliminary financing components that have all made up what you see before you and we're requesting for approval this evening. The exclusive negotiating agreements or activities that have been completed were the concept master plan, which Corin Crawford with Griffin Swinnerton will show you tonight, as well as some of our infrastructure planning, the site studies, traffic and parking studies, the market analysis, and public facility program validation. All these were important to ensure that we could deliver these facilities with the cost we anticipated and make sure that it all fit well within the site and do some of those preliminary legworks with a traffic study, borings, and other things like that to make sure that it was a viable project in these particular locations that we have for these vital city facilities. With that, I will hand over to Corin Crawford with Griffin Swinnerton to walk you through the development proposal.
Can you go back one slide for a sec?
Sure.
That red dotted line that I'm looking at, is that a perimeter line or is that a potential new trail going in there?
That's a perimeter line.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thinking of a train.
Thinking of a train.
I don't even know what you're
None of
talking about.
y'all. None of y'all. All y'all need to stop.
Looked like a good path. I'm just,
Thank you, Emily, and good evening, Council. Corin Crawford, Griffin Swinnerton. It's a real pleasure to be in front of you again to talk about where we are with the project and steps to move forward. So, moving the project forward, as Emily was talking about, really going from exclusive negotiating to the exclusive negotiation period to pre-development. The work can kind of be encapsulated, I think, in these three images that you generally see. So we're the concept master plan that you see, which was composed of creating a parcel plan for the project itself and a master plan for the build out of the 29 acres, a vision for what the full build out of that project is going to be, and then breaking up the project in phases onto implementation. If we pause in the middle and look at the vision for what the PUD of the project would be at full build out, there are a couple of things that are good to really focus on. A lot of which, were focused and necessitated the work that we did under the ENA process itself. So one key piece of work that we did during the ENA process was look at a traffic signal at the intersection of south of the HEB at the intersection of the new Main Street and FM 685. What that does for the projects is it creates a straight shot Main Street. Really critical to the design was to create a retail corridor. A lot of the retailers we talked to, a lot of the retail brokers, and just generally understanding what good development looks like when you're looking to create a mixed-use district. It was really critical that we get confident that we could place that intersection south of the HEB. A lot of retail brokers talk a lot about, in a lot of ways where HEB functions as a shadow anchor to the project itself. So you pull in a lot of the retail demand in a straight shot retail corridor. That was key and critical.
this intersection is on a diagonal. The intersection goes northeast, southwest. So when you say south of HEB, are you talking about the intersection that's going to be on 685?
The intersection that's going to be the new intersection of the new Main Street.
In my head, I don't see that as south of HEB. I see that as west of HEB. So Just making sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, so the placement of the intersection, so the HEB store,
Mhm.
we could see the HEB store, the new Main Street intersection, either going south of it or north of it in the site. And we designed it with the Main Street so that it would go south of HEB.
I see what you're
Right,
saying.
so
You're saying that
southwest,
if you
southwest,
extended
right.
Main Street across, it would go south of the frontage instead of coming in behind it.
Behind it,
So
exactly.
in front, behind works better for me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, now I understand what
That
you're
was like
talking
a
about, the
critical
alignment
design piece
of
of
it.
it.
So we're
Right.
not doing that where that, it comes with that curve across the bridge.
Yeah.
It doesn't continue up to.
Like bifurcating the site
I
itself.
got you.
If you bifurcate the site itself, it creates a very strange dimensionality for all the rest of the parcels that you create. And so it was we wanted to call out that as a really critical aspect of the design that set the tone for the placement of the different parcels within the rest of the master plan itself.
And in panel 2 here, I haven't seen the final or the final draft of the master plan. Is that section 9, phase 9? Is that big gray box back there? Is that where we're envisioning the parking structure eventually being?
So those numbers, if we look at the first one, we're numbering all the different blocks.
Sure.
And so block number 9 is what you were talking about. I think the parking structure is block 6.
Block 6.
Yeah. And that, we call that in the master plan itself, we call that the district garage. You also have, that would be a public serving garage. The parking structures that you see in blocks 9 and 8 are envisioned to be structured parking to serve more high density multifamily and commercial in a subsequent phase.
Okay.
And then so you go from what the vision of the site is to the near term phasing of it. And we thought about what that phase 1 can be. And we've designed a phase 1 to essentially, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg with the things that we are confronting with the marketplace. You need to create a destination. Probably one of the most important pieces of feedback that we got from the broader marketplace was the most important thing that you can do is to start. And if you get into analysis paralysis, then what you're doing is you're losing momentum. And so we put together a phase 1 that was doable and achievable in the near term that creates the momentum for the subsequent phases down the road. And that includes the recreation center, the retail. There are 2 pieces of retail that you see in red there. There is a piece of retail integrated into the recreation center at 10,500 square feet, a 1,250 square foot retail establishment in the city hall integrated with city hall to create more of like a modern city hall type structure that serves a variety of different public as well as civic administration purposes. And then all of that is centered around a central plaza. The central plaza is also a really critical activating piece for creating a destination. Lots of people were very excited about the possibilities that you create by the new intersection that's created at the new Main Street and the FM 685 intersection. You create a teaser parking, it's called. So if you were either driving north on FM 685 and you wanted to turn left onto Main Street, the immediate thing you see is some teaser parking for people to see that there's a place of arrival. Creating a very attractive and just convenient retail is really important to also couple that with parking. So you create teaser parking, and that allows for people to know that they can get to the site, they can get out of the site, and they can start interacting with the site very rapidly. And then you start to discover more of what the site has towards the interior of it. So there's some key elements. We looked at different options for where to place City Hall and where to place the rec center. And we can talk a little bit about what those decisions ultimately were led to. But you know, a lot of these pieces, there's sort of 6 months worth of work, really fine tuning how all of these things stitch together and how they create momentum to move the project into the future as well.
I've heard the plaza programming wise, I heard a rumor 24/7 pickleball.
No, the rumor I had was there's gonna be a big giant star right in the center of the plaza.
Yeah,
Look at me.
I like that.
Those are all, we're looking forward
Big
to
orange
having that
star.
conversation.
Orange star.
What's
Okay.
the time frame between number 2 and number 3?
The timeframe for development itself?
Yeah, completion. Well, I mean, I
Um,
see that it seems to be in phases. I mean, I know this is all phase 1, but I
Right.
see, phase 2 has some stuff that phase 3 doesn't have. It seems like we're gonna, you're gonna, not build some things right there off the bat, but then you're gonna be adding them later on. Say, for instance, number 7, and number 2 right there. Number 7 is a park, but at number 3, number 7 is looks like maybe a parking lot. I'm not sure.
right.
What is the time frame?
So part of the activities that we have during the pre-development agreement are about setting up for the phase 2 and working with the city to continue to attract the other, developers, other retailers, other users. So that work starts tomorrow, essentially, right? I mean, that's essentially what it is. There is no set delineation point between when phase 1 is happening and when phase 2 happens. We're out in the market where we're saying, okay, what are the other opportunities for activating other areas of the site? Like I said, that work starts tomorrow. If somebody came forward and said, I'd like to, really talk to you seriously about how to activate more of the project, those negotiations would happen immediately. So there isn't a hard cutoff between how phase 1 is planned and what and when phase 2 could generally start.
Well, not so much that, but
Yeah.
I would say that phase 1, part 2, phase 1, part 3.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah, that's just going to be. It's going to flow then, basically. As
Yeah.
am
So
I
and
asking the question correctly?
yeah, I think you are. I mean, it does make a lot of sense. I think that the best way to answer it from our standpoint is we're going to set this up to remain responsive to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Part of your question is when is the market going to come back, right?
Well, yeah.
And none of us have that type of crystal ball. I mean, we wish we would, right? But I think the point is that we are looking at a really strong belief in the growth trajectory that is here in this marketplace, and we do believe that this is going to be one of the first marketplaces to bounce back when the broader economy and in the capital markets themselves start to rebound.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Anyway,
I'm grateful for Griffin Swinnerton to step up and be able to take charge where another company was not able to do that and kind of left us hanging there. So just put that out there.
We'll keep on
I'm
going
grateful
as we
for
go.
it.
And feel free to ask any questions. We'll keep through this slide deck, but I'm happy to jump back to some of these slides as we generally go. But that's a nice slide to talk through what that looks like. So we did talk a little bit about the elements of the phase 1. The phase 1 itself is the 5 bullet points that you see to the left on that slide. We've got the infrastructure, including the Main Street extension and a central plaza. That Main Street extension piece of infrastructure really is going to be on site as well as west of the site between Railroad Avenue and the site itself. It includes a bridge. It includes some parking adjustments to some of the other parcels, in particular the church parcel as we're showing west of the site itself. It includes a new city hall. It includes a rec center. The combined square footage of the retail in the recreation center and the city hall is 11,750 square feet. And then the surface parking to begin with is designed to be flexible and adaptable to transition over to structured parking as the project continues to build itself out. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see some of the renderings and the designs for the recreation center itself and the city hall. And those are those facilities. And then the retail itself. We really are excited about what the retail it will be and can be, how that can really provide some jumps, some lifeblood for the project itself. all centered around creating this retail corridor destination off of Main Street, integrated into the rec center on one view, and then the other, a retail establishment integrated into the new city hall, creating a bit of like an indoor-outdoor feel where it's being envisioned as having a broader plaza, and then the plaza and the sort of covered canopy seating area of the cafe, retail, restaurant of the city hall is then, into the conditioned space of the actual facility itself. So while that piece of retail within the four walls in the conditioned space is 1,250 square feet, the broader area under the canopy is another like 2,000 square feet or so. But we only quote conditioned space within a building itself. In terms of the sources and uses, we show a project that is financially feasible. So we really took great pains to design a phase one that fits below the sources of funds that are currently available for getting that project going. And, it's a kind of a force multiplier. Once it happens, you hear me say this a lot, where one of the perhaps best predictor of success for the project is to get started. So many people said, hey, listen, a lot of people especially in the retail market, we know when we go buy a house, or we know when retailers are looking at new facilities, they need to see something. They need to kick the tires. They need to see shovels in the ground. They need to see momentum. That momentum is what draws the excitement for what can be. You folks are visionaries. A lot of us like to think that we can envision what's happening, but the truth is most people can't really look, in their mind's eye and see something happen. They actually need to see shovels in the ground and see storefronts up before they're ready to make the commitment. So this shows how we look at the financial feasibility to say this is a way to get started and create a really exciting project, and that begets great things as it goes forward. So generally speaking, you've got a $2.5 to $5 million surplus from the amount of funds that are available, and the planned investment that's a part of that, including the Griffin Swinnerton team to be your spec development partner for the initial phase one retail. And so as we lay out the schedule, this is a high-level roll-up schedule. The schedule itself kind of thinks about the project into four buckets. The first three buckets are your building buckets, right? And the last one, what we're calling forward planning, those are the planning activities that we are doing to set up the project for a successful phase two. And you can think about each of these three pieces of the project as components and widgets, so to speak. The infrastructure scope works in its own time frame, coordinated with the city hall and the rec center. These kinds of design approvals and construction activities are all happening in parallel, all choreographed to keep the project moving expeditiously. With construction on the infrastructure scope of work slated to begin at the end of 2024, this time next year. So I'll hand it back over to Emily, but around for more questions as well.
So before you take off,
Yeah.
And I've talked about this a lot in terms of looking at the future with self-driving cars and automation like that. And I've learned that there's this notion of transit-oriented development. We talk about making our new developments walkable, vibrant, easy access to walk around. Is there any sort of elements of transit-oriented development that we're looking at in terms of tying into public transportation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. The central civic garage that is being planned for. So one of the activities that we had as part of the ENA phase, and that's going to continue into the next phase, is we looked at the possibility for a park and ride. And the park and ride ties in with the city's transportation plan that it currently has. And it also is a way to create, the density that you're looking for, a structured parking that serves the broader community population itself. So that park and ride would create for this project to be more a destination for the broader, commuter population, and as they, catch buses and things like that more into the downtown Austin area. So with that type of destination, when people arrive at the site, they see all of the different amenities that are there at the site, and they can be attracted to the activities of the site itself. It makes it more successful. But the transit-oriented nature of the site is to create high density, it's to create multi-uses, and it's to create multimodal access to different forms of transportation, be it auto, public transportation, the like. The park and ride, well, we haven't done that. I won't stop on that. But the park and ride is being a hub for commute, and to create this project to be a piece of the nodal regional commute framework for how transportation generally works is something we're very excited about.
And I think, at least in my experience with municipal footprints,
Yeah.
it seems like Texas has always had the notion that we've got all the space we need, and so there's not a lot of transit-oriented development theory built into our city structures. And thinking ahead in terms of where we want to be 50 years from now, I want to make sure that we're at least leaning towards incorporating elements along those lines, so we don't have problems 20 years from now when that becomes more of a reality for us,
Yeah. I mean, certainly it's a good start.
or 10 years, or whenever that tipping point is.
Well, the key tenets of transit-oriented development are to push the limits on density, which we're doing. We check that box. To create mix of uses, we're checking that box. To place activities close to close to housing, close to where you shop. Creating live, work, play, learn type of environments. That's what this plan does. So by definition, this is following the tenets of what transit-oriented design is.
And to
Thank you.
go back a little bit further, I go back one more slide. I'm a little taken aback by these. These are just concept drawings because
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh my God, it's a San Diego strip mall. One of the things that we had talked about early on was making sure that the rec center and the new city hall reflect the architectural heritage of what is left of old Pflugerville. So I just want to make sure that's part of the thinking in all of this.
Yeah, so it's a great question. We know that putting renderings together has a lot of upside, but it has some risk too, because you start to think to yourselves, is this fully baked? This is completely conceptual. It is nice to understand massing, scale, what could be, but in terms of talking through materiality, architectural aesthetic, we're not at that place yet. And that's something that is a part of our process where we're really good at collaborating with local governments in doing that. One of the things that we love that the city currently does, just by nature, is that we've, for instance, worked with the ad hoc committee for the rec center and then for City Hall, which has some of your colleagues on that committee, where we're talking about these very aspects of the project, so that we're gaining feedback from electeds and city staff about what the overall architectural character wants to be really early into the process. That's something that we recommend cities do in all of the P3s that we do. You guys just did it. Like, it was just, we have this ad hoc committee, we'd like for you to meet them. That's music to our ears, because we're often having to try to convince cities and city councils to have that level of participation. So it's already part of the DNA here, it's already part of the process, and we're just really excited because that's going to make for a better project.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, the old Pflugerville buildings have that because they were built before there were cars.
For sure.
They have that density
Yeah.
and walkability built into it. So I want to make sure that we're building that with the new project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we'll just wrap up with we are recommending approval of the preliminary development agreement tonight with Griffin Swinnerton. They've been an excellent partner with us through the ENA. They, as you can hear from Corin's presentation, done a really good job of helping us to incorporate the 19 goals that council outlined for this. In addition to your point, Councilmember McDonald, that the TOD kind of conversation as well, there are other components of all of our master planning efforts that we've done for the city overall that we're trying to make sure are incorporated here. So that really sets an example for our community as we move development forward. And so with that, James and Jeff and Jay and Corin and I are all here to answer any other questions you have, but we do recommend approval of the PDA this evening.
Emily, I just have one question. How far away is this from Mocan?
Couple hundred feet.
No, it's a little farther than that.
It's really not that far, and we have had conversations with TxDOT about crossing it with Main Street. You can see here, and I apologize, I don't think my pointer works, but you see where the bulk of like where the words Main Street are, Mocan is immediately to the west of that. And we have worked with TxDOT on that, allowing for crossing of Main Street with this project.
I think there's a very interesting opportunity with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things that came up in the rec center community input, I forget the official name of them, but one of the things that I know was talked about there was connectivity between the existing rec center and this new rec center, with some sort of trail along the creek with maybe some built-in amenities along there, mini theater or a pad where you could have storage and workout space for morning yoga or afternoon yoga, whatever, right? Is that still something that's factoring into this particular part of this phase, or is that separate?
So the trail connections certainly are in there. I think what you don't see in the presentation this evening is the south side of City Hall, which really has a beautiful view of the
Right.
creek and green space in that area.
Right.
Which would be landscaped and incorporated to that kind of pop-up programming in that park space would be available there. I think long-term, we'd look at how those connection points were made between the existing rec center and this rec center. And that would take probably some more time for those connections, but I think immediately those opportunities will be there with that phase one development.
And that's why I was asking about the dotted line, that's the perimeter line, because the creek crossings are all, pedestrian crossings are all on the other side of the creek. And so if we're gonna leverage the existing crossings under the bridge work there, then we'd have to make sure that there's a pedestrian path to get over
Correct.
there, or if we're gonna create new ones. I just wanted to make sure that we understand what our intention is there, so we don't build it and say, oh, well, now how do we get there?
What do we do?
Right?
Certainly.
As long as we're going into this with thinking and planning that through.
Yes, that committee for the rec center provided some great feedback, not only for the rec center, but absolutely for those connections to new and old and through the trail system as well.
Thank you.
Emily, are we still contemplating an overpass at 685 and
685 in Pecan.
yeah.
Yeah, pecan.
At this time, so we've moved into the second phase of FM 685 study, and they've done some additional modeling. We're not certain that we'll be able to do the overpass and that we'll have a different alternate for that intersection based on some more advanced modeling that's being done through the second phase.
Oh man.
Tunnel, build a tunnel.
No, I'm just thinking about your point and
How you cross.
yeah,
How do you get there,
Yeah.
right? Because that's just, and that's why I want to make sure that we have a plan now.
have it in mind.
Because even if we don't build it today, at least we know how we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. And motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Nice work. Thank
All
you.
right, moving on to our next item, 5C, discuss and consider action regarding approval of settlement agreement for Austin Materials LLC versus the City of Pflugerville.
So moved.
Have a motion? No.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
No presentation?
Motion to approve the item as presented.
Second. Have a motion and a second to approve item 5C.
Well, the attorneys present it. It's got to be good, right?
That was like one of the best presentations we've seen, right? Are we on the same page?
Okay.
Saw a Tesla truck yesterday.
Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank
And
you.
we are cutting off anything David Rogers wants, so I can win my bet with Doug.
Okay. Yeah, Ashley, would you, open the three items, I guess? Not at the same time, but 4C, 4D, and 4F.
This is where you're gonna get held up.
What did he say? 750?
7:45. I know.
22 seconds.
Closest without going over.
Ashley, you'll read
Price is
them.
right rules.
$1.
You'll
And
read them.
read the
Read the
caption.
item, thank you.
Jeff, would it help if I get straight to what my issue is with 4C?
It helps everybody.
If we can wait for the,
It's a
Read
it's a
the line.
2-year temporary.
Wait, wait, wait.
She's gotta
She's
read
gotta-
it.
she's gotta read the item
Read the
first.
item first, sir.
council.
Item 4C, approving the conditional agreed purchase agreement and associated conveyance documents between Arabon Real Estate LLC, parcel number 14, and the city of Pflugerville as necessary to acquire real property interest for the secondary Colorado River Raw Water Line project and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Ms. Whelan. For the record, Jeff Dunsworth, City Engineer, Assistant Director of Utilities. I'm here regarding the item 4C. I have with me the talented Ms. Norma Martinez, our right-of-way agent. So we will entertain any questions you might have, or do you want the full presentation, sir?
I think Mr. Rogers just has a question.
I'm wondering why on a relatively small parcel, a 2-year temporary easement is $118,000.
It's actually 3 years, sir,
Oh, 3 years.
3 years.
That-
And that gives us
That's right.
some-
It's through the end of 2026.
Yes, and that gives us some leeway as far as, when we acquire the property, or when we acquire the easement, giving the contractor the option of which end he's gonna start from. We're working at multiple phases. Not only does the pipe have to be installed, it's gotta be installed complete from end to end. We have to have the pump station in order to fill the pipe, in order to test the pipe, to flush the pipe, make the full connection. There's seating, there's also cathodic protection that has to follow with a substantial amount of testing. Generally, it's 2 to 3 years is the given timetable for putting together a project of this magnitude with a 15-mile, 42-inch water line.
Yeah, I'm just, and I wouldn't have a problem with that cost number at all if we were buying the property, but we're just,
Essentially, it's a 3-year lease.
it's a 3-year lease.
Correct.
So is your
That seems awfully high. Am I
But it's
am I
based on
crazy? I
well,
mean,
it's based on the-
$118,000 to lease land for 3 years, a single parcel.
It's based on the appraised value and the going market rate. CBRE is our appraisal service. They evaluate the current value of the property based on adjacent property, adjacent uses. I believe this property is greenfield, so it's got the lower cost. And it's essentially, it's 10% of the appraised value. I believe the complete appraised value is $10 per acre. So we're looking at 10% per year for 3 years. And that's where we come up with that value approximate.
And I think an important point that you brought up when you said that is that this is on the lower end
Correct.
as opposed to there as well. So they went ahead and they got the appropriate SMEs who did the information, did the research, looked at the applicable data as well as what the marketplace is giving. They're saying with the right-of-way agent and the company that we use that, they found this to be the appropriate price.
So we're renting the property for 3 years and we're paying 30% of the value of the property.
Correct.
Why aren't we just buying the property?
It's additional, it'd be far more additional cost to purchase the property, and it is a temporary construction easement. A lot of these, a
But
lot of
once we
these,
buy the property and we use it for 3 years, then we can put it back on the market and get our money back.
I've not seen that done before, cause it's gonna be an isolated parcel. We
So
don't have
linear.
access to roadway, access to water, access to wastewater.
It seems like we would buy it and then be stuck with it because nobody else is gonna want it.
The only one who would want it would be an adjacent landowner.
Yeah. And they'd want us to maintain it. So we'd have, we'd have M&O on that too as well.
Well, you
Yeah,
wouldn't have access
Jeff, all I can
to
say
it.
is, I'm seeing property in the area going for anywhere from $17 to $20 a foot. So $10 a foot seems,
I mean,
given the location, to be very fair.
Well,
I don't know how you come up with the 10% per year for a lease, but I think in residential I usually use the 1% rule, which is, I guess, about 12% per year. So I guess that makes sense to me too.
I was about to say, it's a good deal. I mean,
But yeah,
it's a good
it
price.
feels like a lot of money that we're spending in order to construct our water line.
well, and the cost of doing the construction, it doesn't bother me at all. It just seemed like $118,000 was a lot just to rent the lot, but, all right. Well, in that case,
I mean, it's a good question. It's not a bad
it
question.
sounds like it's
But obviously they did
done
a good
the,
job.
done the homework on it.
Yeah.
Move to approve 4C.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve 4C.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Good negotiating. Let's make sure we strike this from the record. Nobody sees us.
Jesus. Motion carried unanimously. 4D, Ashley?
Any specific questions on depository services?
Curious why we chose Wells Fargo Bank as opposed to Texas Institution?
So 2 years ago, they did an RFQ process. Our investment advisors participated in that process. I wasn't here for the RFP, but they did choose Wells Fargo based on scoring criteria. So there was a 2-year agreement there. This is just the 1-year extension that's allowed within the agreement. At this point, it would be very disruptive to switch all of our services with only having 2 years under Wells Fargo. We're just now starting to really access a lot of the services that they do have available. So I've met with them at least 3 times since I've started to try to access like the services that they can provide.
All right, well, next year I'd like to hear more about the wonderful services we're getting. Move to approve 4D.
But now she just piqued my interest. Okay. What, man, I wish she didn't say anything. What services that are we accessing that we weren't accessing before?
So we are we're getting a sweep account set up so that up to this point, we haven't earned interest on the funds that are sitting in our Wells Fargo account. So we are creating that sweep so that we start earning that interest on those available funds. When I met with them, they actually had a lot of interesting, for instance, utility billing. One of our biggest issues is refunding deposits, and those deposits going nowhere, and those checks sitting outstanding on the bank statements for months or hunting them down. They end up on unclaimed, honestly, is where they end up. So they had some unique opportunities to issue that refund differently onto basically a debit card, to where we've issued that refund, no more tracking on our end. Those are just a few things off the top of my head.
They sound like phenomenal items that will have to make sure that we stated here and we can reference next year when that question's brought up. So I second your motion.
Have a motion and a second on 4D.
Sounds like we got some new fodder for the RFQ next time.
I know, right?
Do you offer this?
It's true.
Bless you.
God bless you. I just like how he said
Okay,
Texas
motion
companies.
carried unanimously. 4F, approving a water tower license agreement between the City of Pflugerville and Travis County Emergency Service District Number 2 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Any specific questions? Councilman?
So I went through the contract, and it's got some empty spaces, and it also has conflicting language in two different places about indemnity.
So this might be a legal question or,
No,
I'm sorry.
The contract appears to be incomplete
okay.
as it was as it was presented.
And maybe
It
Brandon
looked like
has a
it was
comment. Thank
It was
you.
a draft that was
So-
not quite finished.
So there was to the indemnity portion is important because we had a comment to Travis County about, mutual indemnity because they're a county government, we're a local government. They took that to their commissioners court before we could actually finalize that. And we have that comment out to them to confirm that that's is what is staying in the agreement, that there's a mutual indemnity clause for both local governments that we're working with our legal and their legal to clarify that, the indemnity piece of that agreement.
So
All right, I move to postpone 4F until next meeting so that we can have that final, before we say yes.
Is there a time frame on this? Or
Not for us.
is it, no?
Not for us. No.
No, not at all.
Okay.
That's a motion. Did somebody second it?
No second to
no
wait
second.
until the
And we'll bring it
contract
back.
is
All right, I'll
complete
second it
before
for
we approve it?
council, just for the sake of.
I mean,
Is it incomplete?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
just
it's
confirmed.
incomplete.
He just confirmed.
There's a part in the contract where it says, insert clause.
Which paragraph is that? I'm sorry.
I don't have it
I
in front of me, but,
I can point it to you.
So yes, yeah, that's fine. They're gonna bring it back. That's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's, not vote on this. We'll bring the item back.
11 minutes. 11 minutes.
thank you.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Is that
Who
it?
said
Council?
I said 8:20.
Oh, okay.
I think that's it, isn't it?
Well, we can have a
Okay,
discussion
motion
about
to adjourn.
six.
I'll second that motion. All right.